Yeah, let's do this.
All right. I'm waiting for my co-presenter to start the
Boom.
timer. All right, hello everybody. My name is Marcus. This is JP, and we're going to do a weird sort of co-presenting thing to talk about responsive images in Drupal. You know, it might notice the title is called Mad Max with. There will be Mad Max references peppered throughout. So if you know Mad Max, get excited. If you don't, you should probably watch the movies when this is over. So as I said before, I'm Marcus. I'm the designer at Bose Digital.
I'm JP. I'm a Drupal developer, I guess senior Drupal developer, one of several. And yeah, so I'll now take credit for any of the slides that don't look very well designed. Um, those are my fault. The rest of them are all Marcus.
It's the hazards of competing between dev and design on a daily basis. So we're actually hiring at Boast. So if you're interested at all, and we're hiring developers and I even think designers as well. So this presentation will be available online, so you can click these links. But boast.com/join is where we have a listing for all of our open positions. So let's just dive right in here. We're going to look at the past, when the internet used to be a terrible, lawless wasteland, aka Australia. Sorry if there's any Australians in the audience. That was a Mad Max reference. But it was okay because we didn't know any better. The word mobile wasn't really a thing besides gas stations, and responsive wasn't a thing at all. You only had to think about presentation on a CRT, like one type of screen essentially. That was like 2007, 10 years ago. Now it's 2016. We have plethora of devices. Everyone can see things from on their phone onto their watch to big screens to small screens. We have to design for all of these different scenarios. And we also have to have images that look good across all these screens. So your images deserve better than just being designed for this one CRT that is clearly stuck in 1998. They deserve better. Before I get to that, we got to talk a little bit about the type of screens that we're looking at here. So you might have heard this thing called pixel density, or retina displays, or HD, all those things. Let me get a poll here. Who here is a designer? All right, so you guys probably know what I'm talking about, and the developers should know as well. But this is sort of something that can be lost in translation between development and design at times. So when you hear the term pixel density, what we're talking about is how many pixels you can cram into a certain area, essentially. So this diagram here is very helpful to illustrate this. So 1x is the old school way of doing it, where this is just one pixel. And retina displays, which is what Apple has patented essentially, are when you cram 2 pixels per side. So you have 4 pixels inside of this 1 pixel screen. So you're getting more information packed into the same size, the same area. And there are even more densely packed screens, these 3x. If you go onto Android, there's about 25 different screen densities between 1 and 3. There's 1.25, 1.8, all different. So we really just focus on these 3, the 1, the 2, and the 3. And sort of illustrate this a little further, this is Tom Hardy, aka Max. And if this is our 1x image, you see it's kind of pixelated, but as we increase the density, it gets clearer and clearer and clearer, and we can get more information into the same area as a whole. So this is one thing that we need to be concerned about, especially when it comes to moving images from one screen size to another. You want to be concerned about what sort of screen sizes you're looking at, what the density is there, and how those images are going to be changed from one screen to another. So back to 2007, this is a regular occurrence that might happen. If you shrink your viewport down on your screen, on your browser, you might have an image that just doesn't care and just bleeds right over onto your content, and that doesn't look great. You don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen. It's 2016. This is the future, as said by Back to the Future Part 2. Sorry, that's off the topic. We don't want to do this anymore. So enters one of the simplest solutions that was developed for CSS, max width 100%. So you have this nice image of Max right here. It's set to max width 100% on your desktop, and it looks great. You go down to tablet, the max width's still set to 100%, so it's filling the whole width of the screen, but Max is starting to get shrunk. And if you go down even further to mobile, this doesn't, for Mel Gibson, he might like this because he's nice and thin, but for the rest of us, this looks pretty bad. So there's a really quick solution that you can add on top of this to make it go from not good to good, and that's include height auto. In many cases, that's already there behind the scenes, but sometimes you do need to include height auto just to make sure that it is locked in place so that your image aspect ratio will be the same across all screens. Now, I don't know if there is an actual name for this, but JP and I have dubbed this ESI, the ever-shrinking image technique, for how if you want to create an image that is quickly responsive across all screens, you just add this max width 100% and height auto, and it'll change from your desktop all the way down to mobile. It'll keep the same aspect ratio, and it'll work pretty well. This is pretty easy because you just find an image that you can that'll work across various sizes, that you're don't really worry about losing any sort of visual information because it can look good at a small size and a large size. And the great benefit here is you only need one file, one image, less code, just a few lines. Problem is, in today's world of HD images, you do kind of have heavy loading issues. So you need to be concerned about how your mobile users are getting this image. A lot of people don't have 3G connections or 4G connections all the time. They're not always on Wi-Fi. So if you're going to load up an HD image that's going to look great on a desktop, when they try and load that on their phone, it's going to take a long time to load, and that's going to cause problems. It might also jam up their data plans, which you really don't want. You don't want to have unhappy users. So you need to be aware of this. And this solution doesn't really take that into account. You can get around that by putting sort of a medium image right in the middle that looks okay on an HD screen and okay on a small screen, but looks really good somewhere in tablet or in desktop. Now, I'm going to turn it over to JP to talk a little bit about how this can be put into Drupal.
So I won't spend too much time on this because, and the idea behind, we labeled this as an intermediate session because we're not going to go into super in-depth with theming, but on slides like this that maybe there is, you do want some more information, there'll be links down there. For example, the Drupal 8 theming guide is right there, so you know how to get a CSS, get style sheets loaded into your theme. But if you put this in there, this is nothing new. Ethan Marco was talking about this a while ago. But if you put this in there, you can do the ESI, the ever shrinking image, and take care of things.
So brands really struggle.
So let's take a look. We do have a demo site. So the first time we did this presentation, it was like a hands-on. We went super in depth with stuff, and it lasted about 2 hours. So instead of that, we're going to just kind of breeze through a few things. But I'm going to pull up some dev tools here.
Everyone's favorite.
Yeah. Click here, get some responsive image, and do what another speaker said only web developers do is resize, and we're good.
Voila.
It quote unquote works. But as Marcus said, this is the same image is getting loaded no matter what device you're on, so it can cause some havoc for folks.
But as everyone here knows, not every image is created equal. So this is just going into Google, typing Mad Max, and you get all these different types of images, and not all of them have the same type of region of interest, essentially, or focal point. So we have the blue boxes here to indicate sort of where you might want your user to be drawn to, their attention to be drawn to. So here's a nice one where this is the original image we were using of Max in the middle here, so centrally focused. But there are others that are, sort of this horizontal one, or off to the right, or to the left down here. You have to think kind of like a designer here in these cases, rule of thirds sorts of situations, where you sort of split up your images into centrally focused, left focused, right focused, top, bottom, those sorts of things. When you look at what images you're trying to load on your website, this becomes a problem if you aren't really considering those, especially responsively. So if we have this central focal point image here, if we were going to try and scale it down without using max width, we could do cropping essentially. So you can actually program the cropping so you can still have one image, but it's being cropped automatically on its way down from screen size to screen size. So on desktop down to tablet, what we're doing is we're losing the outer edges here, but this is still the same file all the way down, and it still looks good. So you're not really losing any sort of quality here because you're keeping the same quality all the way down. You're just losing extra information on either side of the image. So you have to kind of consider what is the main focal point of your images in these cases. And this is sort of something that we see a lot more in background or hero images, when you scale down that hero part of your website down from desktop to mobile, you want to be concerned about where your user is really looking, because there can be cases where if that image scales down, the focal point, which might be a nice car or a nice family, just gets pushed off because you didn't appropriately account for where the focus of the image is. So we call this simple responsive design, single image manipulation. And like I said, you want to find a image that has a region of interest that you are aware of, that you've basically mentally mapped out beforehand. It could be in the center, the left, or right. These are the easiest places to have a focal point. But you can do more intermediate steps using percentages. That becomes a little bit more difficult. But if you stick with something that's sort of centrally focused here or left or right, you can stick with, once again, your one image that'll work across all screen sizes. You just no loss of quality, no loss of actual size of the image itself, of the region of interest. The problems are that you still have a heavy load because you need to load that whole image every time, and you need a particular type of image. So it requires a little bit more research into what you want to put on your website in terms of design. So JP is going to talk about Drupal here again.
Yeah, so the best way to do this is to use, good news is they're all core modules in Drupal 8, and these modules will work together to generate a picture tag, which we'll dive into a little bit more in depth in a moment. But if you're going to use these three, and you'll be good to go. The only one that isn't installed by default is responsive image. So breakpoints and image styles are already good with this, as long as you're using the standard installation profile. And so this is, when you go back, we're going to put all these slides online. So this slide is sort of like this is what JP and Marcus were talking about. So this is sort of the outline of all the steps. So this is the overview of the process. So after you've enabled and installed for Drupal 8 responsive image, you're going to create your breakpoints, and this is done in your theme. And so you'll create a your theme breakpoints.yaml file. So in my case, it's Furiosa, and the label is this human readable thing. Make it something that you'll understand. The media query should look pretty similar. It's just like in CSS. The thing that's interesting with breakpoints is you can give each one a weight. So instead of in CSS, whatever one is at the bottom is going to take priority. Here, you may think of a breakpoint that's 6 months into development or something, but you actually need that to be rendered higher. You can just give it a lower weight. And multipliers are the ways that you'll address retina displays for 2x and 1x or even 3x images.
Future.
So the other interesting thing about breakpoints is that you can create multiple groups of breakpoints. The ones on the previous slide were tied to my theme, but you can also create breakpoints that are tied to different features. So you can separate the idea of the breakpoints in your YAML file as being like the breakpoints for your styles sheets. These can be completely different. So for example, for this one, say I have a page banner that will appear on every page in my website, but those images, those breakpoints, the images work great at different breakpoints than my styles look great. So I'll create a breakpoint group for them. Same thing with the one on the right for the slider. Say I have a slider feature. These are completely different breakpoints. This is what works for that slider. So I'm going to put those in here as a breakpoint group. So the next step is to create the image styles for those breakpoints. So for example, I have full, medium, and small for the image styles that I want to have. And here's another one of those with a link at the bottom to create image styles for when you're doing this in your free time tonight. So in general, for image styles, I like to start with scale and crop. It's kind of a good go-to. And my also personal preference is not to put the number of pixels to scale and crop to in the name of the image style, because sometimes I end up changing them, and that can kind of look weird if you have a title, if the name of an image style that is 480 by 480, but it's actually not 480 by 480. So that might just be a personal preference thing. I'm not sure what other folks do. The other thing you need to do is if you create an article full and you want that image style to look good on a Retina display, you have to create another image style for the 2x. So, and all you need to do is take your regular old image style that you created for image full, multiply everything by 2. Pretty simple. And this post, I didn't fully, I guess I understood, but the link that we have here is a great blog post about pixel density that I highly recommend reading. So now we've created the image styles, we created the breakpoints, we have to map those two together, and that's kind of what makes the magic happen here. And this is what the responsive image module does. It gives you this screen. So if you visit this page, you notice I have, these are the breakpoints that I created in my theme. So I chose them for it's in the breakpoint group. If that drop down, those are my theme. Remember, my theme was named Furiosa. If I select that drop down, the other ones I created are going to be there too, and we'll get to those momentarily. But you click those the little drop downs, and you map the image style that you want to that breakpoint. So I'm going to do article full to 1x, and then I would do click the 2x and do article full 2x there, and the medium ones, I would just, you kind of match the shapes to what you want. And kind of the last step, I think this is the last step before we look at it, is you manage the display of your content type. So I'm going to the article content type, and for my image field on there, I'm going to select responsive image to the format, and then click that little gear and select that article image, responsive image that I just created, put that here. So that this is another time when like names of things are important. So don't name your responsive image style the same as your image styles. Make sure you got, you can clear, because those will also appear in that gear person. But make sure your responsive image style does not equal your image styles. And so let's see if we get this to work. And you can see that I got the narrow mel here. As I get bigger, I get a medium-sized mel. And somewhere there's there's a little, it's so small.
Yeah.
There's medium. There's large mel.
I don't think he likes to be called large mel.
Sorry, Mel. And just so that you can see what's happening, I will make this bigger. So you can see there's my picture tag. And the nice thing is Drupal 8, the module will give you a fallback because there is some browser compatibility issues with the picture tag. But if you notice that there's a lot going on here, but the way that it works, it's sort of like the HTML5 media tag, in that there's different sources for the different HTML video tag, where there's different sources for things that are rendered in here. And you notice the important thing is that this source set, if you notice, it's using my image full. That's the biggest one. And then it also has that media query is right in there as well towards the end of it. And the other cool thing is that it addresses the issue of the ever shrinking image. It will only load the specific image that corresponds to the width of the device. So as it won't even load the big one until it's needed if I start it out on the phone. So it's a lot better performance-wise for people on mobile devices.
And it's a little bit of a cheat because it's actually creating those 3 separate size images from the image that you upload using Drupal. So while you do have only one image that you're supplying to Drupal and telling it to scale and crop, it creates 3 different, depending on how many breakpoints you have, it creates images that are scaled and cropped for each of those screens.
I'm really sorry, but the second screen keeps dying.
Yeah.
Because the resolution, can you try this?
Sure, yeah.
Can you switch that to number?
What is the goal of your
It might help.
Everyone needs to know, what does your user what is your user
The only
account?
solutions.
And what are the various steps they go through to do that?
So
So excuse us for a moment.
if anybody has any questions while we try and fix this.
Different steps are, and then what are the interactions in that process that they're having with your organization or your product? You want to get an understanding from them as to what is their emotional response. Are they happy with the experience? Are they not? Are there other emotions that your product is driving for them that you should kind of touch point within that journey? And just overall trying to understand what value does your product drive to for your users? Does it make them feel more fit, right? If you have a smartwatch app that tells people how many calories they burn in a walk, it might make them feel more fit. It might make them feel more social if your product allows them to interact with their friends. It might make them feel more productive if your app or your
What's
product
an arrangement?
productivity. So really trying to get a sense of
Yes.
not just what goal or task that
What's
your product helps your user
to
achieve,
my custom?
but also what is the emotional response that this person is having as a result of using it.
What's in this desktop screen? Where is it on?
The width.
And next,
Uh,
plan releases.
I actually don't know, and from what my understanding, from what, because I'm mostly on the design side, my understanding in using Drupal, we've only
It's been
ever
happening all-
used we haven't used the
throughout,
W
When you're developing
modifier yet, but
your product,
JP, I can try this. Do you know about
Sorry, what was the question?
if there's other ways to handle the pipeline for making images that can fit into a larger screen without using the 1x, 2x, using the W.
what is the driver of your product?
Could you repeat that last part?
You're working on a, say, 2-week sprint, 4-week sprint, you're doing a release after that. How are you defining what work gets done? Right. It tends to be efficiency, right? Like, say we have this amount of resources available to us, we have this backlog, let's prioritize it based off of some arbitrary conversation.
It sounds a little bit like client side,
Right?
so like a JavaScript type solution.
So you really have no idea that within that time period, if you're actually increasing or decreasing the value of your product for users.
Well, it's a field, so you can customize. You could create a custom. You could use a twig template and customize the markup for that field. If you're not happy with the way that it's rendered, I would say that if you're kind of doing it this way, you're getting pretty good. You're doing stuff pretty well. It's pretty performant. So that's what I would recommend just off the top of my head.
Should be the person who in your roadmap is saying during these particular.
So I apologize for people on the left side of the room throughout the whole weekend. I guess things
It's been glitchy over
it's
there.
been kind of flaky.
But it's really your product manager's responsibility.
But we're gonna look at sort of how this simple responsive type can actually be, or is being displayed in the real world right now. I don't know if you guys have heard about this new cool Wi-Fi thing called mesh Wi-Fi networks. One of them is called Eero. But their website, they use the single image manipulation down from the desktop all the way down to the mobile. So they have this hero image here, where it's centrally, the region of interest is right in the center, which is their Wi-Fi device right here. And as you shrink the screen down from desktop to even tablet here, you're losing part of the edges here, but your focus is still right there on their Wi-Fi device, which is exactly what they want. The rest of the content here can change as it's supposed to change, but the image is just being cropped and scaled down as need be. And right here is a little bit of CSS for how you could handle this if, in this particular case, where this image is a background image, and you can just set the background attachment to fixed, to no repeat, and position to center, because the object here is in the center, but you can set it to left or right, depending on where your focal point is. But this can also be done using Twig in Drupal. So,
Yeah, and just to show you how cutting edge we are, there was a great session earlier today about twig recipes, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we were looking for, the best way to do it in Drupal 8. So here's a link to Maurizio's great slides in session. If you missed it, I highly recommend checking it out. And this is the way to to do it. So you do need to install this image URL formatter module. There's a few ways to do it 100% Twig, but I guess this is way easier than the way I was looking at doing it before. And then you just would adjust the Twig template to spit out the markup that's in that code section right there, and you're golden. You can totally do this.
All right, so back to Max again. There's still a third problem here: text and images. So there are companies out there that have a unique logo type, they have a unique font typeface, things like that they need to actually create an image for, and it can't be easily handled. So they might have it actually in an image. So in this case, I just put my name is Max in this image here. So as you actually shrink down that image that they are using for Hero or anywhere on their page, as you shrink it down to tablet, it looks okay, but then it's still legible. But if you go down to mobile, and I admit that because this is on a giant projector screen, it's still readable. But if you can imagine it being on your tiny phone, this is going to be very hard to read, and you don't want that, because you want it to be legible across all screen sizes. You don't want to have to alienate anybody who can't read something that small. This is all about accessibility in some form as well. So you need to handle images on different screen sizes in a third way. We call this as art direction. So we go back to the original one. We have Mad Max here again. We go down to tablet. So we've cropped this image a little differently. It's actually a whole new image file that the designer came in and made. So it's Max is off to the left a bit. The text is still here, and it's still scaled nicely. Go down to the small screen. Third new image again. The text is handled inside the image, and Max is scaled a little differently. But these are three separate, distinct images to handle each screen size that have to be made by a designer or somebody. They're not automatically generated, is what I mean. So we call this art direction or advanced responsive. So this is way more labor intensive than either of the other methods, because you have to go in and actually generate images for each screen size. And while we've only been talking really about mobile, tablet, and desktop, images can have multiple different breakpoints of their own that ignore those 3 breakpoints alone. So you could have 8 different breakpoints across whatever your image is actually designed to look like. So you need to be aware of those sorts of things. The benefit here is that it offers a customized experience for everybody on every screen. So they don't have to, you go down to the mobile version, it's going to look perfect because you designed it specifically for that. That image is going to look great there. You go to tablet, it looks great there because it had to be made for that screen. Likewise for desktop. As you can see, this is going to require a lot of images, a lot more loading if you're moving back and forth between tablet to desktop just by scaling your view screen. And if you are doing that on a desktop and scaling your browser window, you're going to see flashes. You're going to see because it has to load in that image. It's going to kind of jar the experience. But most users, you don't have to worry about that. So this is an example here with Old Navy. This is actually a common thing that I've seen with a lot of fashion websites, is because they have a lot of unique text, and they have a lot of updates because they have sales all the time. So Old Navy has on their desktop version, they have this image here. The text is actually embedded in the image. So as you scale down to tablet and then eventually to mobile, this would be very hard to read. This $10, $12, I mean, even on this screen right here, these are kind of small. So you can imagine if you went down to a mobile screen, this would be almost impossible to read. So the designer came in and made a whole new layout for just the mobile screen alone. And they did the same thing for tablet. There are other examples of this method. Square, the card reader company, and Bundy also use these exact same things. And what you can use for this is the picture tag, which JP mentioned before, where you load in different images for different screen sizes, different media queries. So if you had one here, that would be the large for the big screen one, the summer sale one, and then when it's down to a smaller screen size, you have this is your fallback one as well. So if they can't load this one, it'll load this image every time. But onto Drupal.
Sweet. So the way to do art direction in Drupal is with image replace. There's a module that does just this. And the best thing is they have kittens. So and we'll show you how to get kittens. Think of it as this way. All right, so you've got these three images, and you kind of need, the way the module works is that you're going to have these 3 image fields, right? And you're going to kind of cram them all into this one field this carrier, if you will, and it will render the correct one depending on
Think about doing a small
on the media query. So let's see how it works. Again, this is just the overview thing for when you go home and do this on all your Drupal 8 sites. Like Marcus said, it's a little bit more involved. There's a 7-step program instead of a 5-step program. But and some of the steps overlap, so it'll look pretty good. But the first thing is you will need image replace. Also, CTools is a dependency, so you make sure you have both of those installed. Enabled. And second one is to create those breakpoints again. And for this example, we'll be using the one for the page banner breakpoint that I created earlier. And then you'll create the image styles for the replacement image. So these are the kittens, right? Those are the replacement images. And you'll notice that in image styles, after you install this module, there'll be a new image style called replace image. If you don't put the replace image style in this, it will not work. So this is a key feature, which is why it's in a green box. And the next step, similar, because it's exactly the same as before. You're going to map the breakpoints that you created to the image styles. So this is the new piece. You're going to create those replacement images. So in this case, we're only doing 2 cats because of time. So these are the replacement images that we're going to do. And so after you do that, you're going to create just use the existing image field that's in the standard installation. And this is going to be, I got an extra S in there. Or the line break was off. That's my fault because it's a bad slide. Not your fault, Marcus. So you're going to use the image field. You're going to add that as well. So this is the container field. This is the cat carrier, if you will. You're going to make sure that's on your content type as well. So then you're going to adjust the container image field, and at the very bottom on the field settings, you'll see this. So you're going to map the image replace to the image styles. So banner image small, we're going to do the small banner style, and same thing with the large. This one was a gotcha as well. So it kind of it's counterintuitive, but if you think of the container image, that is the only one that's going to under manage display. That's the only one that's actually going to display on your content type. So the kittens, the replacement images, you're going to disable those completely from view. And then when you format it, you're going to select your responsive image style with that gear. And then when you're going to add those images, so you have the replacement images and you have the container image. Another gotcha here is even though you won't actually see the container image, you do need to put an image in there. And you can see it, otherwise, again, it won't work. But let's see, after I've done all these things, you can see we have a very confused Max. And then in the smaller screen, we have a older, more disillusioned Max. And so let's look at what that markup, how it appears to be. So you can see we get the picture tag again. But if you notice the source set, so I have this NH logo. What the heck is that? Well, I actually used the New Hampshire Drupal user logo. That's my container. I don't recommend you do that. Just don't pick a random image like I did. I just wanted to see what would happen. So if I edited this node, you'd see a nice little New Hampshire Drupalcon head.
Yeah, so you probably want to choose
your fallback image. Yeah.
Or at least a relevant one, not a random one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things, we've covered kind of a lot of different things here, and there's a lot of things to consider when you're picking images for your website. This is just a sort of a list that we came up with at one point, and this is by no means comprehensive, but you have to consider things like, does your chosen image have type in it? If it does, you're going to want to pick the advanced responsive image type. Does it, what size is the viewport? Like, what sort of viewport do you expect your users to be looking at? Are they more mobile users? Well, if that's the case, you probably want to design images that will work best there. If they're going to be working on their desktop more often, then you can pick the HD images that'll work better on the desktop. The more you know about your users, the better you can figure out what images they're going to be wanting to look at. So we talked about where the image focus is. We didn't really talk about where if there's a call to action there, but that's kind of goes along with if there's text in your image. If there's a call to action there, you also want to be able to figure out where is that going to move in respect to your image as it goes responsive, especially if you have each image is custom made for every screen, that call to action is going to have to move to interact with that as well. What are the breakpoints of your image, not the website itself? Does your image need its own breakpoints to, if it has to be smaller on, half the view screen on a desktop, you need to be aware of that sort of thing. And of course, if you can get away with just using one image, why not get away with using just one image? So using either the simple or the ESI method would be probably the best course of action if you can find one that'll work or can work either of those methods. And of course, with any project, how much time is this going to implement? How expensive is this going to be to you? Can you spend the money? Can you spend the time to develop the different images across all the different breakpoints? If you can, why not? You get custom experiences for everybody to look even better. But if you can't, obviously you want to do something a little simpler, but that's still effective and still works. So any of these responsive methods will work to fall into that place. And do your images have captions? That's kind of an accessibility thing there. So if your images have captions, how are they going to interact with as it goes responsively? Are they going to be moving on top of the image, into the image, below the image, all that sorts of things? It's just kind of something that's a broad accessibility thing that needs to be concerned about. And thank you, and as always, design responsibly and responsibly. That's my PS.
The more you know. And we really focused on fields. I don't know if you could tell that. There's a back and forth, I guess, if you have an image that's in a body field, you probably use the easy, when you upload it through the text editor in Drupal 8, probably use the easy method for those. But if you really if you have a project that had, like say you have something that looks like it might be in the body field, definitely use the paragraphs module, and I would say convert that into a field, have a paragraph style for an image and use the methods that we talked about. So any questions? We've got a little bit of time, I think. Yeah, we're going to upload them to the session on the D4D website. So yeah, we'll put the slides up there. Yes.
Oftentimes, like the set of features with your breakpoints, you know that you are trying to help users accomplish this. Right? These are the features you need to do that. And you've already launched kind of an MVP of some very low fidelity version of those features. And with releases, I think it's more of your effort should be focused on enhancing the existing features.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in case anyone didn't hear, the question was about if you create all these breakpoints and you have all these image styles, and then each time you upload the image, you have thousands of, not thousands, but you have a bunch of images that could cause a poor user experience.
Well, the benefit of Drupal is that it will only call the necessary image for that screen size. So
There may be a problem that you can solve without adding code.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bad service.
Yeah, sure, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, it can take up a lot of server space for sure. And that's one of those things, I guess it's a balance, If that's a concern for your client, then perhaps on certain features, maybe you don't implement, the art direction piece. Maybe maybe just for the slider feature, you use the one image method.
There's a lot of websites out there that can help you compress images way down to help eliminate the space that's going to take on your server. So that would be like, if they really, really need them, that's the route I would suggest, so that you can still get them all in there and it won't take up as much space, because that is something that we didn't really talk about a lot, but how much space this is going to actually take up And the art direction one takes up more space because you have to generate those different images for each one. But whereas for the other methods, it's usually just one. It's not as cost expensive on your server.
Yeah, and there's one method we didn't really talk about because it's not available yet. Or there's a module for Drupal 7. Actually, there's a module. All of these modules have backports, or at least have the picture. There's a picture module for Drupal 7, which is a backport of one of them, and then the ones with the kittens, responsive image module. That's a Drupal 7 release as well. And there's another one that's client side. It uses a JavaScript solution, which if you are constrained by server space, maybe it's more of a client side. Use a JavaScript solution to only serve up to scale and crop things as based on the user agent or screen size. I forget exactly how it works.
It's on an as-needed basis, essentially.
Yeah.
From some of those tests, but that's not necessarily what you do in user testing anyway, right? Like you're looking for patterns more so than statistically relevant responses.
Yeah.
What I usually do, and maybe this isn't a true hallway test, but with like that quick and dirty usability testing, I still put together instructions on that message, and I try and have them help identify who are the people that we're doing that testing with, because then you know that like you're getting people that they trust, like that their feedback is going to fit. All right, so just in the interest of time, I'm going to power through the rest of the slides, and we'll leave a couple of minutes at the end for questions. Unless there's something pressing that you want to jump in or ask. Okay, so the next, incorporate micro interactions that you hope will reinforce desired emotions within individuals. So how many people here use the Google Calendar mobile app?
And what was the service that helps you with that you mentioned?
So
What?
the thing that
Compressive
I love about
images.
this app that I think is highly underappreciated is the amount of micro
Ah,
interaction that
cool.
Google has built into this to reinforce your experience as you go through. Even just think about the process of creating an event. You can start typing in a sentence that says, "Beer with Annie at 9 p.m. And Google can recognize that sentence and actually turn it.
I mean, Photoshop and Illustrator do allow you to try and get compressed down as much as possible, but obviously those aren't it's not the only way to do it, and you can do it by other methods. But
This is actually
it's kind of like
there's a lot of
kind of have to test it out, try and figure out what's going to be best, because like you said, every image is different, and the patterns might not be compressed the same way every time, and depending on what software you're using, all these things can kind of get in the way. So it is, I hate to say that it's a case-by-case basis, because it's not entirely that way, but it's something that you do have to be aware of, that maybe one method isn't going to work for this type of image. And it's going to cost you a little bit more to actually go in and try and figure out, oh, well, if I do this method where I make it 2 times bigger and shrink it down, is that going to work better than if I just compress it using Adobe or some online software? It's a little frustrating, I admit, that there's no there's no magic bullet here. But I would typically err on the side of just compressing it initially rather than going the 2x and then going back.
Just to explain, because I wasn't clear, you compress it.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Gotcha. And then, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, piggyback in a previous question where you have like multiple sources and multiple images that can be loaded depending on the size of the view for
Yeah, I think it depends on
recognition.
intent. Like with some products,
Something that was mentioned is that Drupal
and they just
creates
add
the
it.
image
Like
only
this
for
is actually
Google.
a small
And
thing
what
that
would
I
happen,
noticed
for
on
example,
the
like
next web.
in your demo, like you load the
So
page
if you
to
go
the
to the next web
big screen,
website,
and then you
hover over
use
their
for
logo,
So I think I did kind of misspeak when we mentioned that, is that it creates those images once. So the first time that someone logs on and has to generate and changes this viewport down to a tablet or mobile size, those images are generated at that time. But then every other time, people just call that, it'll just call those images off the server, so you don't have to worry about, the next person doesn't have to worry about loading in or having that image be created because it's already created. They'll just pull it in.
Okay.
But you do have to be concerned about changing the viewport size and how, if there will be a load change there. And I think you can see this in DevTools.
I might have to refresh, I think. So yeah, so you notice I got one image request. So all I'm doing here is I'm filtering my resources by image, and then I'm filtering by the name of my image, the NH logo. So you can see I've had one request that matches these, and then so when I have a smaller. So now I've had another. So now two requests. So I guess that's what. Yeah. But it does create the image styles. So I believe, so image styles it does have its own cache. So anyone who's ever, drush, image flush, so you can flush the caches of it, which sometimes you will need to do. But I believe, the cache is created after the first person. I'm trying to remember. Does anyone know if when you upload, it gets created when the image is uploaded, or when it's viewed the first time by the browser? Yes. Okay, that's what I thought. So when you upload the image to a field, it will only apply that style when someone actually views it, and then it'll cache it. So and then it has this little token thingy that I don't fully understand. That's what that italk is. That's the image style. That's
the image token.
Yeah. So I don't know if that helped answer. Did that answer your question? Is that good? All right, sweet.
So I think we're out of time.
I don't know.
I don't know.
We've been talking for about 47 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So. And we had 50 minutes. So. Okay.
So we still have some time, I guess, while they empty out theirs. So anybody else have any more questions?
In the second model, where it was cropping the image,
Mm-hmm.
you weren't using the focal point module to do that. Is that done in core in Drupal?
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
The focal point module?
Yeah, there's a
Oh,
module there's a
I didn't know that.
module
That's great.
Oh, for D7, yeah.
the part of the image you want to focus on.
I get a lot of strange looks when I say this,
You
but
know, crop to
strategic
all different aspect ratios.
is a way to help the newest senses.
We did talk about that, but we didn't, not here, but we were investigating that, but
Yeah,
not
so
for
there's,
D8.
if you remember the image cache actions module back in the day. All right, so that has a new name because the image cache never really made much sense, but that name didn't, in my opinion. So there is still, that module does have a Drupal 8 version. It doesn't have a way to, just in that version of the module there isn't, but I mean, we can see if.
To select the focal point is what I mean.
Yeah.
Not a thing. I think they added one or two new focus.
Yeah, we totally overlooked that one in terms of, because there isn't a version of that for D8, right?
Visual element
Focal point.
that made
That version only?
Alright.
Sweet.
We gotta look into that.
Cool.
We totally missed that.
and Facebook does
This is why these things are great. So yeah, it looks like it has a beta version.
some elements of
So you can set the focal point.
there's really not a
Nice.
lot of new
We did look at, so outside of Drupal, there are ways of automatically creating images based on a focal point.
design enhancements.
But I think
Do this sense of
they're
knowledge
not.
of the user because
We didn't really find that they're great versions. It sometimes seemed like the other services aren't really the best way to go about it. So I'd say investigate this, obviously, or go with the method that we suggested for the simple method. But I try and stick to Drupal, personally. Not just because we're at Drupal. But thank you for that. Thank you for that.
One other really quick thing. What I was asking about earlier, you can do it without the fonts.
Oh, you can?
Yep.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Oh, okay. This is great, though. I do appreciate the feedback because we were trying to investigate if there were methods in D8, if there were other methods that we were missing. So glad to know that there were some that we totally left out. Anybody else? Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Great, thanks.